Still coming through with that icy blue, just using the edge of the NIMAG. Getting back in there with some of that, more of that golden yellow. Try to emphasize more of that, the fold on the top of the flower. But notice how I'm going back and forth from my warms to my cools, and I'm kind of like trying to meet them in a nice medium. You know, I introduced the greens, then I came through with a little bit of blues up top, and it kind of, layered those over some of the warmer colors that were in there. And then I came through with some more warm colors and kind of layered those over the cool colors. Just trying to find a nice medium where they're neither of them are really overpowering each other on this part. I definitely want it to look like a smooth transition. This color right here is actually it's a money green. Another one of my like more muted kind of tones. Now I'm introducing a little bit more of my mid blue for the background of that petal. Being that we started with a really dark blue for the background on the bottom, I don't want to continue keeping it really that dark as we're going out to the piece because it is getting lighter as we go. So we're just going to come through with that mid blue, maybe add a little bit of darker blue if it needs it from the edge, but for the most part, I'm gonna keep it nice and bright and vibrant. We're trying to like I said, this is going on a woman, so we don't want it too dark. We don't want it to be too masculine. The darker the piece is, of course, the more masculine it's going to be. So if this was on a guy, I'd probably be using a lot of blacks and concentrates and just barely pushing off, feathering off into a mid tone. But since it's on a girl, we're going to keep it nice and bright with some mids and a lot of like really bright colors. But again, I'm using the blue to contrast against all the other warms that are in the flower, even though the girl is going to be blue also. But you'll definitely be able to separate the background from the girl herself. When I get up to the top, I'll probably come through with a warmer tone behind her just to contrast her as well. So I came through with just a lighter, a little darker blue, just for the edge, just to give it a little bit more of a cast shadow effect coming from behind the flower. Kind of building up a little bit of flow coming off the flower right here also. Again, you see that lighter tone has, it takes a little bit longer to get in there. And also I'm really not pressing on the skin too hard, so just building it up like I usually do. Keep in mind that, I use a lot of white through my highlights, so until the piece is 90% done and I come through with my white, it's always going to look a little bit muted. It's not going to have its really bright tones like the white does. So you just have to, trust yourself that when you bring that white in, you'll really bring in another source of light, and it'll really even out the piece. Getting back in here with a little bit of burnt orange. Again, I'm staying motivated with this piece. I think if I would have gone into this tattoo kind of dreading it or not really feeling it, I'm not going to do my best. So, I think that it's important too. If somebody comes in and asks for a tattoo that I really don't specialize in, or I really don't do a lot of, then I'm not, instead of sitting there and just trying to make a buck off of it, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna tell them, that I can do the piece if you really want me to, but it's really not the style of tattooing that I do, and and then you kind of just give them the ball in their court, and it's up to them to make the choice. They might feel a little more comfortable going to somebody that does a little bit more than that, or they might say, "Oh, it's okay." And if that's the case, then you know what, it's a little less burden off your shoulders, and you can feel a little bit more comfortable doing it. So those two pedals are pretty much pretty close to being done. So I'm getting off to the next one, making sure I don't wipe. I'm just dabbing it off, making sure I don't mud up my other colors that I just used. Pushing some black in, using a lot of A&D so it doesn't run down into the second pedal that we just finished. You could do it like this, or you can come through and do all your blacks and then all your plum all the way through the flower. I just Today I'm just feeling like doing it pedal by pedal, being that this piece is such an intricate piece with so many different variations of colors going through it. Just easier for me to separate it pedal by pedal and then layer them up from there. Again, I started with the black and now I'm coming through, building off with some of that plum. Not spending too much time on the skin, just kind of brushing it in, just getting that bottom layer in. Making sure I don't, wipe too much of my stencil to the left. That's why, as you see how I started this piece, I explained it in my black and gray DVD also that I'm right-handed, and being that I don't run lines on the majority of my tattoos, and unless things need to be sharpened up, like I did earlier with the bottom leafage and stem, I predominantly start right to left. On this piece, I started on the right of the bottom and got all the bottom shadows and the stem and the leaf done, and then I'm coming through and I'm just starting right to left as far as the petals go, kind of like a bottom right, and then working my way around, kind of counterclockwise, so I don't lose a lot of my stencil. I mean, as I'm wiping, I'm going to lose some of it, but which is the reason why I press so firmly while I'm making my stencils, and I go ahead and shade them also, because I feel like as you're shading it, you can look to the left and see the stencil right here where those little center things are coming out. There's shadows that are drawn there already, and I think those are going to last a lot longer than just a simple line if I had just done the line, which is important because as you're losing your stencil, you can either draw it on or not, but it is your basis of what you're going off of right here on the paper. Of course, I have my reference next to me, and I could just freehand it if I lost my stencil, but these are the guidelines. It's kind of like having cones on a road, and it's just easier to stay within. Really introducing a lot of warm tones into this one. Just checking my reference. I'm gonna layer on some of the cooler tones up top after. Getting in there with some of that burnt orange just to build off from the plum into that bright orange that we were using earlier. And now I'm doing what I was telling you earlier. The complete opposite of the color wheel from the orange is purple, and so I'm just gonna come through and I'm just gonna brush over just a little bit of purple coming off that plum, and what's gonna do is it's gonna give it a really really faint contrast that if I would have like spent a lot of time there, it'd probably be a little too bold, but being that I just barely brushed it over, it's just gonna introduce a little bit of contrast, a little bit of cools, and it's really gonna help when I introduce the rest of the cool tones into the flower. It just ties it all in, and that's something that's not really in the reference, but I just I do that a lot with my pieces, and I feel like I get a really nice outcome at the end. If this petal was right here was green, I'd probably come through it with some reds or vice versa and just brush those. Just not too much, just off the darkest part of the inside of the petal, and it's just gonna, like I said, it's just gonna bring in a different contrast within the petal itself. I'm coming through right here with some butterscotch. It's kind of like a flesh tone mixed with a little bit of yellow tint. It's another muted tone that I like to use. I have a big palette, like I said, and a lot of them are really bright and vibrant, bold colors. All the reds and the blues and the purples and things like that. But I also have a wide variety of different tones that aren't really so bright, and they're muted down. And I think they actually add a lot to the piece. And I'm just layering in a little bit of that lime green looking ink right now. I think I actually mixed some sea foam right there with some yellow. All right, so I feel like we got some really decent depth in this. I'm coming through with a little bit of burnt orange mixed with some red, just to start building a little bit more of our depth from our warm side. Notice how the whole piece is getting fully saturated. Starting just turning that mag on its side. Still using the 9. We're gonna use a 9 for the majority of this flower tattoo. Now I'm coming through with that golden yellow, just really starting to brighten up that edge right there where the fold of the petal is. Definitely starting to get some really nice contrast between the cool background and the really warm flower. Even though we are introducing cool colors into the petals, we're still going to get a really warm feeling because I'd say 70% of the tattoo is a warm tone. Here I am with a little bit of purple again, just giving a little bit more contrast. It just really works really nice as because of the orange and the purple being on the opposite sides of the color wheel. Coming through with the edge of the 9, you can see I'm just turning my mag on the side, just using, kind of making some lines with it, getting some of that texture in the next petal. Coming straight just with plum, no black. Not spending a lot of time in the skin, just trying to get it in there. Then we can start building off of it from once we have it. When I first started tattooing, I used to use 7 mags and 11 mags, and that was pretty much my setup. And as I kept going, I found that a lot of the times when I would use a 7 mag, I would chew the skin up a little. I think it hits just a little too hard for my style for layering because I do so many passes over certain skin. I mean, I did buy some really soft hitting machines that are made for 6 or 7 passes on the skin without damaging it. But with the 7, I was just getting too many areas that would come back a little scarred, and I'd have to give it a month and then touch up the area or anything. So I switched over, and since then I use the 9 mag with the 11 bug pin in it. I feel like I could still get into the really tight areas, just turning my mag certain directions. And I feel like using the 17 bug pin in my 15 mag tube, it gets the ink in so fast. And even if the machine that I use is a little punchy at times, it gets it in there without damaging the skin because it gets in on the first or second pass. You don't have to continuously make, uh, pass over pass on the skin and damage it. So I came through with some plum right here, and then I just brushed over a little bit of periwinkle, which it's like a bluish gray tone. It just gave it a little a little hint of cools coming off the edge, which is what we want. Introducing some flesh tone right there. And I don't know if you can see, but every time that I rinse my tube off, or my needle off to switch over to a color, I always dab it on the paper towel. I don't really, stick the needle into the paper towel. I just come from the top and bottom and just wipe off the the rest of the water, or the muddied up ink that didn't exactly just fall off, and try to keep my needle as clean as I can. Like if I was going to switch over to my 15 right now, the first thing I do is I'd rinse it off, I'd dry it, and I'd lay it down. I definitely want to let it sit there and have the ink dry on it. Starting to build some of my blacks in this next petal. Using a lot of A and D so that the ink doesn't run into the petals where I already have the oranges and yellows. Doing a lot of work right now with the edge of the mag. Getting some really tight areas right there, even with the 11 bug pin right there, still being able to get it. Introducing some flesh tone right there. Back into some tangerine. A little bit of flamingo pink with it. And just a hint of purple with it, just to bring out some of that cool. This is a light magenta coming through over that flesh tone. Get a nice little blend right there. A little bit of purple. All right, now we're coming through with some more plum, trying to build up the shadows to the pollinia part of the orchid, which is those little stems that come off with the little pollens on the bottom. I just recently found out that it is called the pollinia. I hope I'm right. But we're gonna be working on those little, the brown pollen parts of it, little buds at the top. Still coming through with that plum. Just trying to build up some of that petal in the background. Really concentrating right now, making sure I'm checking my reference. Not really worried about anything else that's going on right now, except for the part of the tattoo that I'm working on right now. A little bit of purple, just right over that plum. See how it just brought in that new tone? Just layering it right now. Using that side of the mag right there, just running a line. Not too bold, but definitely giving you some direction. Back in with some of that really red. Now, if I were to put that really red in there without that purple and that plum, it would be seriously bright. But being that we put those darker tones in there, it's just it's not overpowering, because of the purple and the plum that was in there already. Coming through with some more of that really red. Now I'm just getting in here with some of that dark magenta. Getting a really nice blend, just layering color by color, sometimes going over it with another color, but just really trying to get a nice tone. Now we're introducing some of the cools right here with some of that icy blue. Again, it's one of those colors that doesn't really go in on the first pass, but I'm just really, just getting in there really quick and pushing it in. Kind of layering over that last 30% of that red that was there, bringing a little bit of like a purple look. And now I'm coming through on top of that with a little bit of purple. Again, introducing some more purple into this piece. Being that I've been doing on the other petals, I'm just going to follow through and just throw little hints here and there. Just build some of that contrast within the petal itself, within the flower itself also. Introducing some of that seafoam green into the top. It's a really nice color. One of my favorite colors to use. Now we're getting through with some of that bright orange, just kind of getting the background of that one stem that's coming out of the plenia, the center of the orchid. It holds those little pollen sacs at the end. Still using the 9 mag. Probably going to do this whole flower with the 9 mag. Might switch over to some of the wider areas of 15, but for the most part, I'm using the 9 mag through the whole thing. Getting some of that golden yellow in is really going to warm up some of those stems that we have coming out of the center of the flower. Already you can see it's just really coming closer to the eye. Coming off the center with some of that burnt orange just to blend off into that orange and yellow that we just did before. Just, just another couple tones darker just to give it some depth. Show that it's actually coming from the center of the flower. Instead of coming through with like a brown or a really darker color like a plum, I'm coming through with just a little bit of that purple. And it's really gonna contrast the piece again. Like I said, I just try to use colors that are on the opposite of the color wheel, especially on a flower like this with so many colors, just to make it pop more against the skin. Just to make the colors contrast against each other as we're going. And so you can see there's like 5 different colors just in that stem right there. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm just barely breaking the skin and I'm just layering one over the other. Using a really soft hitting machine. I'm coming in with some of that mid blue. Building some of that texture within the petal. I've already put down the icy blue and some of that seafoam green. So coming through with that medium blue and just using the side of the mag and really making it look good. Notice I'm using black right next to the oranges and yellows that I'm doing. So I put down a lot of A&D ointment, and I'm just wiping away from it or just dabbing off the skin instead of wiping into the color because we just did it. The skin's still open and Really easy to mud up your colors if you do that. I know later on when we get to the girl, she's predominantly blue, and so as I'm getting to her neck with all the blacks and the blues, I'm definitely going to cover up with a paper towel the majority of this flower so I don't wipe into it and mud it up because the blue and the blacks and the greens and purples are definitely one of the strongest valued colors, and they will mud up the rest of them, especially the warms, the yellows, the oranges, and stuff like that. The really light valued tones. Again, I'm just layering back and forth. You see, I come through with my warms, and then I'm introducing some of my cools, and I'm jumping back and forth, just trying to get a nice medium in the middle, just so they can meet. I came through with a little bit of purple over the reds that we did, and then I came through with a little bit of magenta, just to give it a little more of a smoother transition from the warms to the cools. And the way I found that the easiest way I can do it is by kind of just bouncing back and forth and finding that perfect medium in the middle. If you look at the reference up on top, you can see that there's a lot of warms and there's